All right, well, let's get into it, Sage, because I'm so excited to talk with you. I mean, I guess the first question I have to ask is something I noticed you posted on social media as of late. You have been one of the cast members who has been noticeably quiet about this season, and you talk about, Survivor, the experience versus Survivor, the TV show. I guess I would say overall, do you feel like those two types of stories matched up with one another, having looked at the entire 26-day scope?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think so. We all went into this season, or at least, well, let me speak for myself. I think, and I hope most people went into the season knowing that this was Rizzo and Savannah's season. Like it was going to be edited around their storylines, and I mean, that's okay, right? Like they go on to play 50. I think that's been announced, right?
Yeah, 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 we're good.
Okay. Um, And so yes, there's so much like of the game, not just my game, like of everyone's like individual game that just wasn't going to be shown for sake of time and the plot. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot that didn't line up, but that didn't the inconsistency isn't what led me to stay quiet off of social media. For me, like it I really value self-control, and I had pretty crippling OCD for a large portion of my life. And OCD is all about like a lack of control. Like
Mhm.
you're going through these compulsions through this idea that it will give you some sort of control that is just not real. And the reality is that OCD has control over you. So self-control is something that has been a really important journey for me. And oh my gosh, it's so tempting to go on and be like, "Whoa, here's what you didn't see," or "What about this? What about this?" And the thing is like, it doesn't matter because even if those things were shown, people are still going to choose what they want to see or believe or interpret. And like, even though there's some conflicting feelings with this cast, I don't want to downplay their story or their narrative or their experience because I'm not them. I wasn't in their shoes. I don't really have any strong opinions on how anybody should have played. The only person I have like a critical opinion on like a game move is Sophie. Um, but other than that, I'm like, I wasn't in your shoes. So like I don't know all the factors that were going through your head in making this decision. So it feels asinine to be like, well, so and so should have done this, or like I did this, and so that's better than this person. I'm like, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's done. And you have no control over the edit. Like you just kind of gotta accept it.
Well, I want you to have control over your story here. So let's get into the epic story that you penned over this. So let's start with where the story ended here, because I would imagine as you were sitting there on day 26, you probably hoped you had at least one vote in Jawad. And obviously, you have this big moment where you reveal your military background to everybody. But when Jeff brings the urn over, what did you think your chances were? Did the jury vote surprise you at all, one way or the other?
No, I knew going into tribal that I had a very slim shot. I still going into tribal, I thought that I was like, I think Jawan will vote me. I was really hoping Stephen was the only person that saw the extent outside of Jawan of my strategic game. I was hoping by having him on the jury, he could advocate for me. I didn't factor in that he would be as upset as he was. Sorry, my dog's crying and needs to be held.
Oh,
He's
it's okay.
anxious. Um, but Christina actually on her way out, she hugged me and she said, "If you make it to the end, you have my vote." And that, so I was like, okay, I know I have at least two, and Christina has pull with other people, so maybe she will also advocate for me. I also, after the Jawan blindside, I was like, this is Savannah's game at this point. Like, she's going to have a very strong chance at winning. So, what are anything I can do to give myself even just a 1% increased chance of winning, like getting Steven out? Because his entire strategic game, most of his game was not like portrayed this season, but there's so much. I'll tell you about two things.
Mm.
Let me finish this thought first. Um, but I thought if I go to the end with two out of the three of the trio, ideally I wanted to go with Sophie and Christina because a lot of people made comments around Sophie that she didn't like do anything around camp and that she wasn't really gaming. And I was telling people, I was like, y'all need to be careful of Soph. Like she is playing, she's doing the same thing I'm doing of sitting back quietly and taking in information. She's just doing it on the other side of the house. Like y'all are sleeping on her, but the perception was that she wasn't doing much. So I was like, okay, I can use that to my advantage. If I couldn't make that happen with those two, then I was like, then my best bet is to go with two out of three of the trio because they have advocates that are strong talkers on the jury. My hope was by having two of them, it would like they'd feel conflicted on the jury of like, well,
Yeah.
we like both of them. We want to give them both votes. So I was like, that increases my, if I have three potentially, then I might be able to win by one freaking vote just because of conflict between do we vote for So for Savannah or do we vote for Rizzo or Savannah or do we vote for So for Rizzo, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, before we get into those Steven points you brought up before, I'm curious because again, you do sort of go mask up. You show the wolf in that final tribal council where you talk about your military background. What was the sense of reaction you got from the jury? Do you feel like, as good as you were of sort of playing up this quirky, goofy character, that it was a little too late to have them change their opinions on day 26?
Um, Gosh, it's hard to say. I think with this particular group of people, yes, there was a lot of animosity towards me that like I did not fully understand. Tribal was so brutal. And it sucks because it's obviously not edited in that way. There's been three people who have acknowledged that I was like treated unfairly during tribal. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying like that was the reality. And what hurts at this point is just not like I'm not going to shame you for that. Like you have big emotions. You're not sitting in these three seats. Like it makes sense that you might feel things right now, but I think the problem is they weren't feeling it. They were pawning it off on me to hold for them. Like it was
Hmm.
giving projection. And that's not to say that I deserve to win. It's just to say there was a lot of hurt feelings. And I didn't know it until about question three. The first two questions, I was like, okay, I can tell. Like, it's so interesting watching myself back in that tribal because I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I was feeling. For me, if I'm not peppy and stuff, that means I'm like, oh, I know these people wanted me to hurt. They wanted to embarrass me of like, and I'm not, oh gosh, I'm not, it's gonna get so crap. This is gonna get so skewed, but I could tell they wanted me to think that I had a shot so that they could give me that slice of humble pie.
Hmm.
And for me, I was trying to find that balance of I don't want to give that to them, but I also don't want to give up on myself in this moment. Like I'm still gonna give it my all and fight, but I can tell like I don't really have a shot here and I still have to go through this whole tribal. It was a very uncomfortable spot to be in.
Well, I want to talk about maybe one of those people that, you were talking about in that final tribal council in Steven, because listen, even as much as you've detached from social, there has been a lot of talk last week about the decision that you and Christina made to turn on Steven. Christina told me in her interview that you were very, steadfast about wanting to get rid of Steven at that point rather than Soph or Rizzo. So talk to me about those two moments you had mentioned before.
Yeah, so there's so much with Steven. So from the Shannon vote out, me, Steven, and Jawan were like this, but it was like kind of I was the middle person between the two. So like when Steven told me about Christina's idol, I held on to that for a couple days. And when I finally did tell Jawan, he was rightfully so spooked. He's like, wait, why didn't Steven tell this to me? And I didn't even think about that. I'm like, oh yeah, if I was in Jawan's shoes, that would be like sort of concerning to me too. But from the Shannon vote on, me and Steven were super close, even with the Alex vote, which is also like all the vote I saw. Hold on. Christina mentioned in the episode, you know, Sage and anywhere the votes wanted to go, like anywhere Sage and Jawan wanted the votes to go, happened. I was like, that's not true. That actually is like the very opposite. The Nate vote, I didn't want it to be Nate. The Alex vote, I didn't want it to be Alex. The MC vote, didn't want that, like, did not want almost like nothing that I wanted to happen worked out. The one time that it finally could have was at the Jawan blind side. But going back to the Alex vote real quick, we all the information was getting back to Rizzo about the split vote plan for that night, as well as the MC vote. It got back to him verbatim that he was the original plan, and I will give credit to Rizzo in that he did a good job by putting that information out there. He tried to. In the end, he tried to pose it as like, "Oh, I was just making stuff up and getting lucky." And I was like, "No, no, you were getting the information. It just turns out it was mainly from Christina not realizing that like I don't know how you don't because like Blue Sub like she was absolutely part of that trio, but she didn't realize that Soph was as locked in with Rizzo and Savannah. So I can't judge that. It's like that's your perception. So you made that move based on your perception. I get that. Um, but anyways, I told Steven, I was like, hey, it sucks, but we're having to pivot because anytime Savannah gets wind that she's on the line, she comes full force and saves herself. So I was like, we have to have her comfortable in order to strike. When she's comfortable, she doesn't win challenges as often, even though she won like every other challenge. She she gets more vulnerable. So I said, hey, All the votes are going on Alex. I think that you should vote blue Soph so that it gives the illusion you're on the outs. It makes you less threatening. Um, keeps access to Christina and her idol. Um, and it allows our relationship to fly under the radar. He was in on the plan to get Christina to flush her idol. He knew he was going to be safe at the Jawan blindside. He knew that there was no chance he was going home, as well as after the Jawan blindside, he started like we developed this plan of like, okay, Rizzo and Savannah probably are never going to trust me again, so we need you to get in there with them and start building relationships. And it was working so well. He just played this great game of taking those opportunities of like, of course, yeah, like I'll be on the outs with the blue soap. That gets less blood on my hands, but also at the end, I can be like, I actually do everything. So I'm like, Steven has 100% chance at beating us all. I think that, like I said, any chance that I can increase my odds, I'm going to take it. And with Steven, when I put him next to anybody, I'm like, I feel like he wins, especially based on how the jury was reacting to him versus the rest of us.
That makes sense. Well, of course, I'd be remiss not to talk about your relationship with Savannah, which you say from the very beginning, you're the Cassandra of Greek mythology. Like, if we don't get rid of her now, she's going to win. But of course, there are moments when you talk about the way that you felt she was making you feel. She has a comment about how she felt you were playing the victim when you were holding the knife the whole time. So, talk to me about your feelings on her and how did they change, kind of culminating in that steak meal the two of you had in the finale.
Yeah, it was interesting watching that back. And again, like I'm never going to tell somebody that they're wrong for feeling what they feel. Feelings are always valid, they're not always reality. So I did not understand the like knife comment because I'm like, I think for what she's referring to are game moves that don't benefit her, but that's not inherently me being like, let me stab you in the backstand. It's like, no, it's actually saying like, bro, you are such a huge threat. Like you have to, like I have to. I'd be remiss if I did not go for you and aim for you. And it seemed like maybe she took that as a personal attack. But I'm like, it's not a personal attack. It's actually the highest compliment because I from the moment she talked when we got on original Uli Beach, I was like, oh crap, she's gonna win. Everyone was like, oh Savannah. Anytime she would talk, I was like, crap, no one's looking at me like that. And so I again never gonna invalidate her feelings because it does suck to feel like you're on the bottom, but the reality is that trio had the majority power the whole game. Something that wasn't shown in tribals. I talked about the concept of cover and concealment, which is something that we learned in the military. In the game of Survivor, cover looks like idols, hidden immunity, idols, immunity necklaces, all the advantages. It looks like concrete things, just like a concrete wall. If you're getting literally fired at in a war zone, is going to give you the most protection versus a bush where you are just trying to camouflage yourself for the sake of not getting caught. And that's how I felt like they played the game of like, yeah, I was trying to pull off big moves, but the side that I was working with, unfortunately, was not as cohesive as the other side, and things just constantly crumbled. And we had to pivot. I'm only one person. I cannot convince a group of people to vote with me if they're not. And you can only push so hard to be like, no, come on. Like with the Nate vote, Christina and Alex refused. They were like, no, it's going to be Nate. And I'm like, I'm telling you guys, like, I get what you're saying. We can make it Nate next, but it has to be Savannah. Like, you have to hear me. So I had to do a lot of like concealment and finding that camouflage to just try to make it to the end. It's not the game I
Last
necessarily wanted to play, but it's the game I had to.
last thing I have to ask is a clip I saw from all of you reuniting to watch the finale. You got that Shannon hug like you had teased her on the way out. Talk to me a bit more about that. How did that moment come at Tribal Council, and how did that moment come, I suppose, a couple days ago?
Yeah, I just want to say that I understand. I try really hard to stay out of the public discourse. I have people who like relay things that they've heard, and it sounds like there's a lot of mixed opinions on that moment, and I understand all of them. I'm like, I can understand how it's perceived as very mean, right? Because it's uncomfortable and it's on national television, right? Like,
Hmm.
so all that to say, and I've talked about this in some other interviews, intent versus impact. It was never, ever, ever my intention to make Shannon feel bad or to feel hurt. But that was the impact. And for
Hmm.
that, I'm sorry, but it was never, ever personal towards her. As I said repeatedly in the game, and I'm very intentional about my words. I'm very specific about the words that I choose because I want to say what I mean and mean what I say. I said repeatedly, confessional after confessional. I don't know Shannon personally. I do not know her outside of this game. I am assuming that everybody, to some extent, is putting on a character for the purpose of this game. So I don't know her, but the character that I'm seeing in this game is raising concerns for me that in my personal life I absolutely would address, but in this game, in the context of it, I can't. That would It would jeopardize my game. I had to be selfish. So all that to say, Shannon is the epitome of grace. She has the biggest heart, the biggest forgiving heart, the biggest accepting heart. And what I really appreciate about Shannon is I called her when I got home and I said, I want to tell you some things. You're going to see me make faces behind your back. You're going to see me talk about my discomfort of how I was perceiving you talking about religion and your intent with it. I don't know if it was or not, but that was how I was perceiving at the time. And she listened. She just held space. She didn't get defensive. She didn't try to change it. She said, I understand. I understand everything you're saying makes sense. That was never my intention, but I understand what you're saying. And she always is committed to learning and accountability and grace. And I friggin' love that woman.
Well, listen, I could turn, listening and accountability and grace back onto you, Sage, because, from the time we got to talk from a couple of times through day 26, your emotional authenticity really shone through. And I know you talked about comparing yourself to Ty and Marianne, and we really saw that, right? The ability to create this authentic yet kind of quirky upfront self, and then behind the scenes you were able to cut those throats and play the game that you wanted. And I know there were a lot of complicated emotions involved in there. We saw that come out in that after show. But no, I hope when you talk about intent versus impact, the impact I think you've had on a lot of people, both as a very fun character as well as somebody who let their heart shine through every decision they made, which I think made you feel a sense of fulfillment towards the end, and from our perspectives as well.
Dang, dude, it's like, what time is it? You're trying to make me cry? It's like not even 8 o'clock. That, again, I try not to put weight in public opinion, the good or the bad, because if you
Right.
don't want to internalize the bad, you kind of have to have a barrier with the good as well. But I've gotten a lot of feedback similar to that. And don't get me wrong, that kind of stuff is so meaningful to me. Like that's how I would prefer to be described more than like any personality traits of like humor or intelligence or appearance. Like it's I love to be described as authentic and genuine, but also it makes at the same time that I appreciate those sort of feedback, it also makes me sad because I don't think that should be a standout quality. I just wish all of us could if all of us could be that way, then it wouldn't be something that stands out. And that means we would all just have more comfort showing up as ourselves without shame. But I also, on that note, I understand in this society why it's really hard to do that. And even for someone like me, I have like days where it's really challenging and I go in my shell. And that's why I don't leave my house much.
Well, listen, I of course always admire the openness, especially in a conversation like this. This was an absolute gas. I'm not talking about passing gas, but just always a great time to talk with you in general, Sage. Seriously, I know this will not be the last conversation we have, but I relish every opportunity we get to chat. So thank you as always, my friend.
Thanks, man. You know how I feel about you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, you enjoy the holidays. All the best to you and yours, and have a great one, Sage. Thanks so much again.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.